Hi there, guys. I'm Ken Steep, and welcome back to McCann Dogs. I thought I'd do something a little bit different today and do a live stream. And this is going to be a pretty informal live stream, and Hippie is really making the most of her opportunity to be crazy on camera. She gets pretty stimulated when I sit on the ground like this, so she's having a lot of fun. But I wanted to talk today. Okay, all right, buddy. Okay. I wanted to have a chat today about dog parks. Now, I have a few friends that visit dog parks, and they're often asking me questions, about interactions that happen there. I would say, we get a reputation, especially among dog trainers, for these types of situations. Now, I wanted to have a chat with you guys here today, and feel free to ask questions. Now, this is a totally new setup for me. It's really informal, and I've got my camera sitting on a chair ahead of me, but I've got my laptop open in front of me, just in front of Hippie Shake here, who's going to do a somersault, I think. And I've got some notes here of things that I didn't want to forget when I talked to you guys about it. But if you have any questions or comments, let me know in the comments, and I'll be keeping an eye on the chat as it's going by. But a few things I wanted to discuss. Now, I have a really close friend who takes his dog to the dog park, and recently they had an incident between, he's got a lab, he's got it's a pretty happy-go-lucky goofball of a lab, but they had an incident with another lab, and he was asking me some questions about it, and I thought this would be a great opportunity to talk to you guys, our audience, about those situations and why we as dog trainers generally don't allow our dogs to go into the dog park. So I want you to keep a few things in mind as we go through this. This comes from all of this information that I'm going to present to you today comes from a lot of experience, seeing dogs that have had a behavioral issue as a result of an experience at the dog park, as well as, we have over 500 dogs a week come into our facility. So, there are lots and lots of stories of people who, have passed these messages along. And I think it's really important to share with you guys, our YouTube audience. So let's start talking about dog parks here. Hip, you got to leave the camera alone though, buddy. Or you're going to knock it down. So the first thing I want to talk about, who's visiting these dog parks? Now, you might be going to the dog park with the idea that you're well-behaved, four-legged family member will have a great time and socializing with, all kinds of other dogs, and you may feel like it's a really great experience, but we know of several instances where people have taken their dog to the dog park because it may have had some sort of behavioral issue. And they feel that taking their dog to the dog park will teach it to be better socially with other dogs. Now, you don't want your dog being, the test subject for that. If, someone brings their dog there because it, lunges at other dogs or growls, the last thing you want to be doing is putting your dog in a situation where this person is working through some of these behavioral issues on your dog. So keep that in mind. The other one is, how big is the dog park and how many dogs are there? Because imagine this. Imagine there are, 20 dogs in a dog park, and they're all relatively big dogs. And little Hippie Shake. Now you see how stimulating Hippie Shake might be. To look at her face. That's amazing. How stimulating she might be to another dog as she gets really excited and runs around and rolling around. That might really stimulate a lot of chase drive with those other dogs and prey drive, and they might want to get a hold of Hippie Shake. And that's the last thing I'd want to be doing to her as a much smaller dog is, subjecting her to that, where she is going to be chased around. That's not going to be a good social experience for her at all. So, really, really take note of that before you go in and use a dog park, whether or not the other dogs in that area, how many there are, and whether or not they might be a good fit for your dog. So, there are instances that I remember when Kale and I were traveling, we're going hours and hours in the car, so we'd stop and we'd go to some, big fenced-in environment, and we might run our dogs a little bit, and Hippie Shake was one of those dogs. And I remember one instance where someone came with a couple of bigger dogs, and not knowing who they were, not knowing, how those dogs were going to behave, we just simply put our dogs back on leash and went to a different area. We're not trying to be antisocial, but we just don't want to run the risk of having, a negative experience, or our poor dogs being subject to something that they shouldn't have to be. So keep that in mind, the size of the dog park and what kind of dogs are there. Secondly, at a lot of dog parks, who's monitoring the interaction? It takes a lot of years as a dog trainer to start to really pick up on some of those hate, fear, or aggression. And I mean, maybe it's rather than one thing. Simply a wagging tail doesn't always mean that the dog's really friendly. It can mean it can indicate a lot of things, especially when you aren't, a trained dog person, whether you're an expert or someone who's had lots and lots of dogs. Some of these things can even be overlooked, and all it takes is that moment that a dog changes its mind. Maybe at first it's having the dogs are enjoying themselves, but something happens and things change. You really want to be sure that someone is closely monitoring what's happening with those dogs. And in fact, we've heard of stories where people will arrive at the dog park. Maybe it's a cold day. So today I actually wanted to shoot this video outside, but it's really snowy and blowy. I don't know what it's like where you're watching from, but in Ontario, Canada, it's really cold and windy. And we've heard of situations where someone has put their dog in the dog park and shut the gate and then went and sat in their car. I mean, that's just, there isn't any good information coming for that dog, and there's certainly no supervision if there were to be some kind of issue. So I'm just going to check in on the chat here. Neoma's channel says, yes, we've been wanting to take Neoma to a dog park for more socialization, but she's very shy, and I've been holding off in fear of a negative experience. That's really responsible dog ownership. I think that's a really, really great choice. And I encourage that kind of thinking, really thinking about what's my dog's behavior, and how currently do they socialize with other dogs or interact with other dogs, and would it be a good fit? And in my opinion, most often you can have better social experiences in other ways. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. One Tail Four Paws says, I find dog parks are amazing when no one is there. That's a great point. We're going to talk about that as well. It's a really, really important point. And Lacey Spooner says she's in Minnesota, so I'm not sure what the weather's like there, but I think it's probably pretty comparable to here in Ontario, Canada. But so does my dog like the dog park is the next question, the next note that I have. So Neoma says, I'm not sure, my dog's a little shy, I've been holding off. Does your dog like going to the dog park? So we've seen people who would go to the dog park and their dog may, tuck in behind their owner, in behind their handler. And people think, oh, I just need to encourage him or her to go out and play with some of these other dogs so he learns to enjoy it. But your dog's really giving you a signal there that this situation might be overwhelming. And whether that's a whole bunch of dogs, or maybe it's one dog, or maybe it's a larger dog or a smaller dog, whatever that situation is, you need to recognize that. And maybe, that social situation isn't the best for your dog. Another thing I think is really important to talk about is, your dog's level of listening. So if you have a young dog in training, the last thing you want to be doing, as you're trying to build value on listening to you, the last thing you want to be doing is allowing them to be gratified by engaging with other dogs and not listening to you. We work so hard. Watch you don't step on the MacBook, keep you shaking. We work so hard to get our dogs to listen and respond to us each and every time. And the last thing we want to be doing is teaching them that other dogs are a lot more fun than I am, and other dogs speak their language essentially. So as we're training you, teaching you to teach your dog, we're teaching you how to communicate with them. But dogs, when they're young especially, I mean, since they're born, they can communicate with each other, and they know when they can really get each other excited, and they know that they can socially they understand how to engage with each other. And we're trying, as we're going through training with you guys, we're trying to teach you how to communicate with your dog. So you don't want to be encouraging them to be responding to other dogs, be getting really excited and know that every time they see a dog, oh, that's my play buddy, I get to go play with them. If you want to have a dog who listens, you really need to increase your value, because you want them to respond each and every time. You don't want those other dogs to be a really, really tough distraction. something that Kale mentioned to me as Kale's just off teaching, I think a grade 2 class right now, but something that Kale mentioned to me before she left is that if you haven't seen it, we have a video on our channel, how to introduce your puppy to your other dogs. And that's exactly what we do with our puppies. All of our puppies that come through, we go through those steps. So if you haven't seen that, check it out. And if you're watching the replay, I'll post it maybe in a card at this point so you can watch that. But when we are starting to give Beeline, for example, our newest puppy, our young dog, more freedom, oftentimes we'll allow her to play with the rest of our dogs, but we really watch her closely. And when she comes back and checks in with us on her own, without any cueing, without any us insisting that she comes back, to us, we know that we've built a great value, on what we're saying, what we're doing on us, essentially. Beeline will leave the pack, come back in, check in, and say, hey, what's up, Mom or Dad? And that's a really great behavior to see from your dog. And that you might be able to have a little bit more freedom with them. And I don't know how distracting this is, but Hippie Shake is being really cute right now. But she's also really trying to get my drink. So what do you think, Hip? I think she thinks it's a toy. We've made so many fun games and things out of bottles and stuff lately that I think Hippie thinks this is a toy. So I hope it's not too distracting for you guys. But when we see that kind of behavior from our dog, we know that they're probably capable of having some more freedom, of going out on their own a little bit more. We're still going to be supervising them, but we know that we've built some value on ourselves, and they're going to be a little bit more trustworthy off leash. Lacey says, "I like her in the video." Yeah, me too. I like her too. She's pretty cute. So I don't want to make this too long, but so let's talk about a little bit of dog park etiquette and some of the ways that you can go to a dog park or take advantage of a dog park, because we do understand that maybe the dog park is your only option. Maybe you're in an area where the dog park is the only way that you can exercise your dog. Now, although I would highly discourage it and insist or encourage you to be more creative and try to find something else, sometimes it's the only option. So let's say who should go to the leash-free dog park. So I would say if you have a dog that is listening reliably, has a great recall, responds to you the first time, every single time, that's the kind of dog that you can maybe give a little bit more freedom in somewhere like a dog park. Some things we want you to remember, though. You okay, buddy? Uh-oh. Some things we want you to remember are, try to visit that dog park at times when there are less people there. Over the course of a day, I drive by a dog park every time I go down to the gym in town, and there are times of day when there's no one there, but there are other times of day when it is absolutely packed. I can see 20, 30 dogs in there running around, and for me as a trainer, I worry every time I drive by that. I just don't want any of these poor dogs to be subject to anything nasty, but there are times, and you can figure that out if you do go to the dog park, that maybe there's nobody there, or maybe there's another dog there, or another owner that or maybe you've trained with, and you trust that dog, and you trust that owner that they would make the responsible decision if you needed to intervene or to work on something. It's always helpful to educate yourself on canine body language. Really watch. There's all kinds of great information on YouTube that you can learn a little bit more about canine body language and be a little bit more prepared if you start to see any signs or signals that you may be starting to have an issue, that someone needs to intervene and take your dog out of that situation. I'm going to leave that up to you guys. It's worth checking it out. There's all sorts of information out there, but really know, what signals your dog's giving off. And that sort of lends itself to, watching your dog. It's beyond me how people will take their beautiful little dogs to a dog park and then not pay attention. They'll be on their phone, or they'll be distracted and having a chat or something like that. I mean, you wouldn't do that with your kids at the water park. Why would you do that with your dog at the dog park? It's just so dangerous, and we see people making bad choices that have to come into us and fix these behavioral issues that their poor dog has gotten attacked, or was in a really nasty situation. It's just not worth putting them in that scenario. So I touched on this earlier. Be sure that you have a great recall. So before you go out there, here's a little training tip I'm going to give you guys. And this is something we talk about a little bit in our online training, but a great place to practice your recall is with other dogs around. Once you've gotten to the point where your dog is responding quickly, you need to increase the challenge a little bit. So maybe going outside of a dog park, on the other side of the fence, or finding a distance where you can work on your recall would be a great way to train. You could, work through a couple of dog scenario. It really doesn't matter how many dogs are in there at that point. You just need to find that distance away from the dog park that you can get some success in. So if you are training your recall, dog park being outside of the dog park, maybe it's a great place to go for you. It's something you're going to have to choose for yourself. But if you decide to go inside that gate, make sure you have a great recall, that your dog comes the first time, every single time. It's really important, and it could literally save their life. So keep that in mind. What other notes do I have here? I didn't want to miss anything, so I hope I'm not too distracting as I take a look at our notes here. Oh, so this is a really important one. Unfortunately, have a first aid kit ready. Everyone should make a first aid kit for their dog, and maybe that's something I can do for this channel. Leave a note. Let us know in the comments below, or a like or something. Let us know if you think putting a dog first aid kit together would be good for you guys. If you guys are new to the channel and you haven't seen our vlog, I'm actually a firefighter paramedic. I've been a firefighter for almost 20 years, so maybe this would be something good that I could provide for you guys. And I see somebody in Neoma's channel says, yes, do it. Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea, is putting together a first aid kit for your dog. So make sure you have that first aid kit ready, but that's not the only thing. Make sure that you know the nearest location of your emergency vet. Now it may sound a little dramatic, but that's the kind of pre-planning that can really make a difference if there were an emergent scenario, and not just for you. If you're at a dog park, there's all sorts of dogs there, all sorts of strangers. This may be a time when something happens, and you can say to your friend or a stranger with their dog, okay, this is the location of the nearest emergency vet. It's really the kind of thing that can make a difference. Time is of the essence if there is a really nasty emergency. So that's all of the notes that I have, and I'd love to hear from you guys if you have any questions or concerns or thoughts on dog parks. We like I said, we get several emails every single month about someone who needs to fix their dog's behavior because, or try to rehabilitate their dog's behavior because they've had a nasty incident at the dog park. And I don't want to make it sound like there's no value to dog parks, because I know there is. Especially, I think it was Neoma's channel that mentioned, someone mentioned, I go to the dog parks, one tail, four paws. I find dog parks are amazing when no one is there. You're right, it's an enclosed area where you can play with your dog. The only problem is sometimes that other dogs are there, unfortunately. And we don't want anybody to get hurt, of course, or even just have a negative training experience. You work so hard to have your dog listen and listen reliably, and you don't want to be untraining them. When you work on a response to name, for example, you call your dog's name, you expect them to turn or maybe come to you. You don't want them to stop doing that. If they're several yards away and you're calling their name and they're having too much fun playing with another dog, that's not a great training scenario. You're not being a great dog trainer. You shouldn't expect them to respond if you haven't worked through that already, and you aren't 100% sure that your dog's going to respond appropriately. So I'm not seeing too many questions come in yet. Again, if you guys have a question or a comment, let me know. I want to point out the fact that, hi buddy. I want to point out the fact, you want to go with my shoulder? This is the strangest thing. Hippie Shake loves to be on her shoulders, and you see, I don't know why, it's really weird, but she's very cute. I don't want you guys to think that it's just the dog park that I'm referring to, because I can think of situations where maybe people are in a school park, maybe in a baseball diamond, that these exact same rules and scenarios that apply. It's not the title of the place. It's actually the social engagement and what happens inside it. So, be a good dog trainer for your dog, and make sure that you can, build on a foundation of success, and you're always giving them good information, and make sure you're never putting them in a position where, something bad could happen. On that note, I'm going to leave you guys. I'm going to take Hippie Shake, maybe outside for a little walkout, and that it's pretty frigid, ice cold here. But I want to thank you guys for joining us here today. Let me know in the comments below. Oh, I see a comment coming in on my phone. I just have to wait a second. I just have to wait a second for it to come in on my my MacBook, and I'll answer that question. But I don't even remember what I was saying here yet. Let me know if you found this helpful. You know, let us know of your experiences. We not only do we hear the bad stuff about dog parks, but we also hear, you know, about people making great decisions where students will come into class and they say, you know, we're at the dog park. All of a sudden, this unknown dog to us came in, and I put my dog on leash and we went out and we played somewhere else. You know, if you're thinking about exercising your dog, sometimes having them run free is not the best training scenario. It's not the best information for them. Maybe something like fetch would be a great way to tire out your dog. You know, if you don't want to just go for a walk, maybe a game like fetch, if your dog's retrieving reliably, that's a really great way to burn off some energy. So, you know, that can certainly be an option for you, and it's fun. You know, all of our dogs like to retrieve. Hippie Shake, it took a little bit more training before she really loved to bring the toy back, but again, we made a video on the channel, and I guess I'll post a card above it after for the replay. But you know, it took a little bit more work, but it's a great way to burn off some energy, and in short order. You know, we can really get Hippie Shake tired out, or get a dog tired out by having a couple good long retrieves with them. So Neoma's channel says, agility classes are great for socializing, I found. Now, I'm going to have to disagree with that, and here's why. So, in our opinion, now you guys know Cale McCann is 21-time world champion of dog agility, and we have our dogs now. I'm not sure how your agility classes work, but in our situations, we have our dogs work with us. All of our dogs are off leash in our classes, which is you know, why we make sure that all of our students are through a few of our obedience programs, because we want them to be great dog trainers before we allow them to come to our agility classes. So we feel like the best way to get a great agility dog, or you know, the best way to get a hardworking dog that can understand the skills and is safe in an agility arena, is to make sure that they listen off leash all the time. So we insist that our dogs are reliable. They you know, are attentive to us. Sometimes, you know, they goof up. We have level 1 dogs. The very first level of dog agility in our school is almost like a hybrid obedience and agility. Oh, I don't want Hippie to close my MacBook. I'm just going to move her. It's almost like a hybrid obedience and agility class. So the dogs get to work on some of their stationary skills. They get to work on some of their response to name skills, their recall in that agility setting. So we're very careful with our agility training to make sure that our dogs can, you know, work with us, stay safe, and we don't need to worry about anybody going to socialize off leash when another dog might be working. We don't feel it would be fair to, for example, if a dog's working on their contacts and they're down at the end of the contact behavior and they're being rewarded for hitting that target plate, and another dog goes over and visits them, if they were doing a great job, it may break that behavior, and then you don't have an opportunity to reward. So we don't think it's fair for the, you know, the other dog. So that's my opinion anyway. Neoma's channel, and you know, take that for what it's worth. Shanlin Robinson says, I took my Aussie to the dog park all the time as a puppy. He's crazy about other dogs now, and focus is difficult for him. That's a great point. You know, as I talked about building value for those other dogs, you need to build value on you first. And you know, it's fun when your dog can go socialize with other dogs, but it's not good information, and you run that risk. Again, you run that risk of, you know, something not so great happening. But as a dog trainer, it just makes your job so much harder. And especially if you're working on some obedience skills, or you're working on some attention skills, you know, the last thing you want to be doing is essentially training them the opposite behavior. Okay. My border collie, I didn't just play gradings and coping around other dogs. She's way better at working with me with other dogs around. Yeah, and that's essentially what we're talking about. It's a good point, Shanlin, and I think you know, I think that's something people should remember. And I bet now, and you can let me know in the chat, I bet now your dog, your border collie, because you did some of those, working of the tension on you and working at your side, your dog's still very social. That doesn't mean you can't be social. We encourage, being social with other dogs that you know. We encourage being social with other people or other dogs that you know are a good fit for your dog. We have our Head Start puppy class, for example. We do socializing, but it is closely monitored by our head instructors of the Head Start class to make sure that the right dogs are matched, that if any unusual situations or situations that aren't good for the dog or good for their training or could be dangerous happen, then they can intervene. So, not allowing your dog to go run around like crazy with other dogs doesn't mean they aren't going to be social. Yoma's channel says, yes, see, we're all on leash at my local classes. Yeah, that makes sense. I think it would be good for my classes to focus more on off-leash handler focus. Wish I was in Canada. Yeah, well, I'm going to let you in on a little secret, and this doesn't speak to classes, but pretty soon Kale's going to be offering online training. So if that's something that you're thinking about, we'll do a full announcement when we have all of that set up. But I think it's important. I think I'm glad we got a chance to talk about it today. It's important to me that we help our subscribers as best we can. Chandler Robinson, yeah, happy to play, but when we were working off leash at Agility, she's not interested in them. It's just me and her. And that's exactly what we're looking for. It's so important. You can have those social experiences with your dog when, the situation's right, when you're dictating you're dictating their behavior, when you can call them back. It's really, really important. I'm going to cut the stream at this point. I want to thank you guys for joining me. If you have any questions, you're watching the replay, drop them down in the comments below. If you found this helpful, hit that like button. And if you disagree, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to chat about it. It's about community, and I really think it's important that we